Hi everyone. Within this interview, we'll have a look at self-forgiveness and time. Now, an inherent tendency that exists within ourselves is of yearning, wanting, desiring, and needing things to be done or changed or altered immediately. Now we have come to be impatient within and with everything, everyone, and with ourselves, especially due to the McDonaldization of ourselves and our world, where we can stop by and get a meal in an instant. Not realizing, though, that there are actually a history to getting and having that meal in an instant, from where it was grown, produced, sourced, exported, imported, frozen, unfrozen, made, the time and effort in terms of actually getting that meal in an instant was actually a accumulation of an sequences of events referred to as the process of an time. Now, when one have a look at, for example, within ourselves and our world and reality, when we, for example, face manifested consequence, that is like internal and external experiences that we perceive suddenly, unexpectedly manifest, like, for example, becoming possessed by anger within self, where one's mind just immediately starts backchatting and racing, or in facing conflict with another within one's world and reality, where one just lash out on the person and exerting this anger, frustration, and irritation. That would be like the meal that one got in an instant within oneself or one's world and one's reality. However, even though there was instancy in manifesting or getting the meal, to, as for example, the anger possession within self, or the external conflict within one's world or reality, there was in fact a sequence of events that manifested within self and one's world and reality, that accumulated within self and one's world and reality, that manifested in its entirety a process of and as time that manifested this meal as one's anger, possession, or external conflict. So, in terms of walking one's process within oneself and one's world and one's reality, one can assist and support oneself in having a look at such things that seemingly, suddenly, unexpectedly manifest within self and one's world and one's reality. And I'd suggest starting with obviously profound, in-the-face experiences where it's like you definitively experience them, and so can definitively, specifically assist and support yourself to investigate, explore, and discover who you are within such manifested events within yourself and your world and your reality, to trace back, walk back in time, meaning walk back and follow the sequences of events that accumulated into and as the manifestation of and as, for example, the anger, possession, or the external conflict. Just like, for example, with McDonald's and getting that burger, it would be like tracing back how and all the sequences of events that manifested to get that hamburger in your hand in that moment, in that instant. So very much as the creation of, for example, and the manifestation of the hamburger is how the creation and manifestation of internal anger possession and external conflict manifest in relation to or in context to the sequences of events as the process of and as time. And as with sequences of events that accumulate into and as a manifestation of something that we experience inside ourselves or our world and our reality, it is a process of and as time. Meaning, for example, the tendency that exists within ourselves is wanting, needing, and desiring change immediately in an instant, like getting that hamburger immediately in an instant. But it is not, in fact, how it works, because one walked oneself into and as one's internal experience and external reality as it exists now, as who self is within it now, through sequences of events as a process of time and processes of time, multidimensionally, as one created, designed, and programmed oneself within one's mind consciousness system as thoughts and reactions and external environmental stimuli and how one's total mind consciousness system interplayed and manifested to emerge as this current self, that self has experienced self as within self and one's world and one's reality. So simply changing in an instant, like getting a McDonald's burger, is not how change in fact really works. Change is going to be a process, meaning a process of time, meaning a process of accumulated sequences of applications where you literally step by step re-walk yourself, meaning walk yourself back in time, back into the starting points of and as you, as the mind consciousness system, to establish an equal and one starting point as self. So through self-forgiveness, you're in fact walking yourself, your life, within yourself in self-awareness. Because have a look, within one's life experience at the moment, you don't know exactly in detail and specificity how you created, designed, and programmed you to be how you are and experience yourself to be in this moment as you are existing and living right now. All the people, the influences, the acceptances, the allowances, the thoughts, the backchat, the reactions, the decisions, the choices, the resonant reactions, the unconscious, the subconscious, the conscious. I mean, it is extensive. Self-forgiveness assists and support one within that process of walking self multidimensionally, meaning the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind simultaneously to take on a point within oneself and one's world and one's reality, and walk that whole point as construct of the mind and see how you create, design, and programmed yourself as that through the conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and physical mind and resonances. I mean, if you really walk self-forgiveness and self-honesty, and you take it a point and you walk that whole point through until you've got insight, clarity, and direction, you're walking yourself back in time, back into the starting point of how you created yourself as that part of yourself that you're facing, as what you've accepted and allowed yourself to create, design, and program yourself as. And then you, in that, have the opportunity to reassert yourself within yourself, to be a starting point within self-responsibility, self-awareness, and self-equality and oneness. And so you can change your living behavior within yourself and your world and your reality. So let's say, for example, you're facing that point of internal anger possession. Obviously, this is now the manifested consequence. This is now that instant McDonald's hamburger that's manifested. Now you've got to trace yourself back in time. Walk back in time within as yourself to the starting point of how you created yourself as this separate manifested entity, as anger possession. And this you do through self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness is the practical application process of walking yourself through the mind consciousness system, leading yourself through all the patterns, through all the layers, to peel all the layers that you have accumulated and built into the creation, design, and manifestation of this anger possession. Mainly you can have a look at, for example, to get some context in relation to how you created or designed and manifested this anger possession, is to have a look at towards who is it directed. Then you can have a look at, okay, what thoughts have come up in relation to this person or this situation that was in the nature and context of anger. Then you can start having a look at what thoughts you were having. Then have a look at the nature of the thoughts. Why did you accept and allow yourself to have such backchat or such spitefulness or such vengeful thoughts towards that something or someone? You can also assist and support yourself through writing out the thoughts that was coming up, because in writing out you can see what is it that you're in fact thinking, and from the thinking you can assist and support yourself to apply self-forgiveness and have a look at why were you in the first place thinking towards that something or someone. What were you blaming them for that you were not taking responsibility for? And this is one of the main points or root causes of an anger, is blame for not taking responsibility. Then one can go into specificity and have a look at within the thoughts, for example. You'll be able to see what it is you're blaming them for that you're not taking responsibility for. One can have a look at a person within one's world and one's reality, how they're acting and behaving towards other people. And within yourself, you've written out the thoughts, and you could see in the thoughts that the nature of them is stuff like, she's not taking other people into consideration. Look how he or she's making him or herself be all superior, or look at how he or she is pointing their finger to this person. They're treating them horribly. You know, something in that line of blame. And then obviously one have to bring the point back to self, because such thoughts in relation to something or someone is projection, where you're projecting what you're accepting and allowing inside yourself towards and superimposing it onto something or someone as the means in and as which the mind used to attempt to try to hide its actual responsibility in its own creation, programming, and design of thoughts and reactions. And then you bring it back to self, and then within self-honesty you will actually see where you do exactly the same as what that person is doing within themselves and towards other people, and how you're in fact hiding you taking responsibility and changing yourself and projecting it or superimposing it onto another, and blaming them for how they are, but in fact you're looking directly in the mirror of yourself. So you're just an example of how to look at what is the root cause of what self is or has suddenly or unexpectedly experienced in a moment, but actually was created over time. Then you'll, for example, see as you're starting to write out the thoughts and the self-forgiveness, and you're looking back at all the memories or events that happened or accumulated in relation to that person, in relation to how they're acting or behaving, and then suddenly all of that came together into a manifestation and creation of anger possession within oneself and one's world and one's reality. And then you'll realize and understand that self was always at the root cause of the whole experience. So understand, with walking self-forgiveness, you're walking layers of time, meaning layers as sequences of events that accumulated within yourself. With walking self-forgiveness, with walking self-corrective application, you're in fact walking here as breath in the physical. It's not that time as an abstract concept actually exists that can like be measured in physical reality. Time is layers as sequences of events that accumulated, and self-forgiveness assists and support you to walk through time as all the layers, as sequences of events, to bring you back to here, which is in the physical as breath. So breathing with the physical is your reference, standing, starting point of here, where there is no time. I mean, obviously, in terms of physical, practical reality, we work according to time in relation to natural earth conditions to be able to practically function in relation to sequences of events. So time is like the organization of sequences of events for practical reality functioning within this world. So obviously from that context, yes, we still walk time, but time in relation to the mind consciousness system is or has become a physical manifested construct or system that's layers of sequences of events that has separated us into and as time as past, present, and future, where we're in a mind consciousness system existing as now, in which we're tied into and as dimensions of time as past, present, and future. And within that, the mind consciousness system obviously using the past to influence the present to recreate the future. And so we're in fact always looping within the mind consciousness system, within the now, within ourselves, instead of actually stopping, changing, and living self-directive principle. And this is also where self-directive principle comes in. Self-directive principle is where we are actually directing our movement and our living here in breath as we walk this physical practical reality. Whereas if one accepts and allow oneself to be directed by consciousness within the mind, you're looping in the now of and as the mind consciousness system, in and between the past, present, and future. So with walking oneself with self-forgiveness and trace oneself back in time within one's mind consciousness system, one take oneself into and as the past, sorting out the past, the starting point of self within self as the mind consciousness system, and slowly but surely removing all those loopholes as time loops from past, present, and future, and slowly but surely in walking oneself and sourcing oneself as one's starting point within oneself, as the points that one walk of the mind and one's world and one's reality, one assists and support oneself to bring oneself back here into living equal to and one with the physical, to find out what it means to really direct yourself as here, as living here in and as and with breath. So realize self-forgiveness is a practical process of walking within self as layers, as sequences of events, to find out how it is that one in fact created, designed, and programmed self, to within that assist and support ourselves to change our starting points into practical living applications that in fact assist and support our living in ourselves and our world to that of actual support and assistance, where we re-establish our starting point, ourselves, and our living to in fact assist and support ourselves, changing who we are, our living, to an expression that changes who we are within and without, and puts a complete perspective on our total experience within who we are and what and how we live and experience, where we'll walk in self-awareness, meaning we will know who we are in every moment of breath, what we're doing, how we're moving, why, how, what's here, who are we with, what's happening, where are we directing, what's changing, when everything will be here in an instant, because we are here as ourselves in equality and oneness. There will be no more of these sudden, unexpected manifestations of possessions and conflicts, and as which we've abdicated our responsibility because we made ourselves think or believe that we don't know what's happening or we don't know what's going on, when we actually in fact do. We've just made ourselves forget through suppressing ourselves into separation of a conscious, subconscious and unconscious mind. Now we've got to stand up, stand equal to and one with ourselves, to take self-responsibility for ourselves and actually change ourselves in our living. And to do that, we're going to have to retrace and walk through the sequences of events that accumulated to create and manifest who and how we are now. So self-forgiveness in writing is really an awesome process to get to know the detail of self. And this can only be done with self-forgiveness, because it can only be done with self-honesty. You can only get a real perspective of the totality of self through and as self-honesty, because in that you stand within the point of saying, I'm ready to face me as what I am existing as. And within that readiness, I mean that I'm able and here and I am taking responsibility for what I see, what I'm facing. And thus, self-honesty is the opportunity, the access, one gift to self, to be able to assist and support self, to see and face self as the totality of what self consists of and exists as. And self-honesty together with self-forgiveness is the practical process of walking that responsibility and facing of self within self as the total mind consciousness system. So self-honesty is the key and self-forgiveness is the door. And both together open up self into self as the totality of the mind consciousness system, to see, realize and understand what self is, has become, do and live within self and self's world and one's reality. And through writing within that, be able to release self from the acceptances and allowances of separation, deception, secrecy and suppression, and the manifest consequence one accepted and allowed to create within that, within self and one's world and reality. And through that insight, realization and understanding, be able to effectively assist and support self to really in fact change. So realize that self-forgiveness is going to be a process, and to be patient with self and really make it part of one's life and one's living as self is walking within this world. And to know that within walking oneself process, one is assisting and supporting oneself to be a +1 in the equality equation of and as the world, as humanity, as we one by one will start assisting and supporting ourselves and taking self-responsibility for ourselves, to prepare ourselves to take responsibility for the world as ourselves. And self-forgiveness will be and is an awesome process when you start walking it within self-honesty and start in fact seeing, realizing, understanding how it is that we've come to be, how we are and what we live. And within that insight, realization, understanding, it's quite awesome to apply self-forgiveness, because you know as you're walking it, you're getting to a point of understanding, realizing and seeing yourself practically in all dimensions. And you're walking yourself practically to and as a solution within yourself and your world and your reality, and you're doing it actively. It's not a matter of knowledge and information. You're actually practically physically doing it for and as you, within and without. You're physically practically walking it. It's actually being done. It's not something that's just knowledge and information blindly accepted. You are discovering, exploring, realizing you for yourself, letter by letter, word by word, sentence by sentence, as you're writing and as you're speaking. You are getting to know yourself, and in that changing yourself for a principle starting point that is best for self, as all, as one, as equal within this world and this existence. That we're walking a process that is greater than just ourselves and our own interests and greed and survival and competition. We're walking a process as a living principle where we will be and become the living example of a humanity that can live together in consideration and regard of ourselves and each other in and as equality and oneness. And it starts with writing, self-forgiveness, and self-honesty. Let's begin.